I really enjoyed how you kind of connect everything from like you have the honesty on the business side, but then it really connects inwardly to your own perspective, your own personal life. And
Totally.
I really respect that because I mean, it's also kind of interesting, and I'm recording anyway. So it's always kind of interesting to note that there's always the people who like don't follow their own advice.
Totally.
And so like I'm probably guilty of that as well, of like I can give great advice and then I'll turn inwards at my own life and be like, oh yeah, I should probably do that too. And then I'll just kind of keep going about my life, not following my own advice. So, I mean, it's really nice to hear that you really encompass that throughout. And that's, yeah.
Well, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, let's unpack that a moment.
Sure.
Because first of all, I'm not a huge advice giver. I don't like the words "you should." I think that's a dishonest phrase because we don't know what that other person should do. We don't know what they're dealing with fully. We don't know how they're feeling fully. We don't know what the context is fully. We only know what they've given us, which is usually only the tip of the iceberg. Sure. So you'll rarely, if ever, hear me say "you should." Typically, I'll say, "I heard you say this, and that makes me wonder all these things," or "I heard you say that, and that makes me curious about," or "I heard you say that, and that reminds me of a time I had a similar problem, and this is what it was, and this is what happened." And I'm all about the experience share, you know? Yeah. But there's something very interesting I think folks can learn about self-honesty, because you bring up a very interesting point about it's easy to give advice to others, tough to give advice to yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think on the surface, most folks look at that and say, oh, well, I'm a shitty person because I clearly see the problems in this person's life. I should do those things, and then I don't do them.
Sure.
And my reaction to that is, well, your actions are actually telling you something very honest about who you really are and what you really believe and what you really want to do. And as an example, you look at me and social media. I got all the way to 30 as a really terrible millennial. I had no social media whatsoever. I hate social media. I think it's the stupidest thing ever because it's like, I don't get it. I'm like, I'm going to go read a book, or like, I don't want everyone to look at the salmon I cooked for dinner. Like, who gives a shit? I just don't care. Meanwhile, I have, peers now who like put up cat memes for the last 5 years, and now they've got 1.5 million followers. And it's like, like, what the fuck? But it's not me. I'm too much of an elitist, like intellectual for it. That's just who I am. Right. Now, when I figured out I wanted to write a book after my 30th birthday, I recognized that I really probably needed to get my social media in gear. Right. So I did. I opened my profiles and I'd post occasionally in that. Now, if somebody came and asked me like, hey, what are the big components of writing a book? I would have said, well, you need social media. It's the first thing my agent said, first thing my publisher said, like, social media sells books. It's your reach. It's your audience. Easy to sell a book. Now, although I knew that, what do you think I did or didn't do?
Social media.
Yeah. I mean, and I have a little bit. And listen, over the next month, you're going to see me do a lot of stuff, particularly on Instagram. I eventually now have hired someone to help me, and they've been working with me since April. And we're building audience, and that's great. But I'm 34 now. I had 3.5 years to be posting and publishing, doing all that shit. And I didn't do it. Is it because I'm a bad person? No, it's because I just don't fucking want to do it. That's not who I am. I don't like social media. So I can force myself to do it, or I can find another way to sell books. And, I spent 2.5 of those years hating myself for not getting the productivity and the impetus up to do what I knew I was supposed to do. And then I spent the last year realizing that, so my actions are telling me that it's not in honest alignment with who I am. So just don't do it. Just don't do it. Because as I'm coaching entrepreneurs, I had one the other day, and she was struggling. She's like, I know I'm, she's actually an Instagram influencer. And she was like, I know I'm supposed to have like a schedule and do posts like every day at this time, and then put out emails and all this, like have all this structure. And she's like, I'm just not structured. I just don't like structure. And I told her, then fuck it. Don't do the structure. I mean, hey, do you like doing live streams? She's like, oh yeah, I love that. She's like, I think of things all the time. And then I want to pop into a live stream. I'm like, well, if that's what you want to do that, So you'll be more raw and real and spontaneous. So what? What I find is that if we're out of honest alignment with who we really are, then we come into friction. And maybe we force ourselves to do it, but it makes us really unhappy, you know? And that's why, like, you know, I got up at 5 a.m. and took a train to Manhattan for 2 years to get an MBA at Columbia. Most people would have hated that. But man, I woke up to that alarm and I was like, I get to get on a train. I get to go to Manhattan and I get to study. And like, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
What's awesome to me is not awesome to you, and vice versa. It's all the time, right? So, you know, I like people to listen to themselves when they're beating themselves up. and see, like, what are you actually honestly telling yourself with your actions, right? Because it's the actions and the habits that actually make for success or not. And by the way, you know, back to what we can honestly control and not, we can control our actions. So, you know, if we find that we're controlling our actions in a certain direction, maybe it's time to listen for that. You know, it's like all the employees and offices I had. Like, I found myself some days not even wanting to go in. I was like, that's weird. I have this office with all these awesome people. They're awesome people. Why don't I want to go in? It's because I don't want to manage anyone, right? Yeah. But, you know, it took me a while to figure out that's what my actions were telling me.
Yeah. But it does take a long time to be, I guess, able to get to that point to where you can, like, I don't know, allow yourself to be able to. I don't know if
forgive yourself is the
but also, I mean, I don't know if I'm a bit younger than you, but like, I don't know if I can decide to stop going to the job I have right now, because it, like, well, also it's harder right now because of COVID, but so, I mean, it does take time to kind of build that up. And is there like a wheel of like mistakes that you have to have before you like can really get going?
Well, I don't know. Earlier we decided that, you know, there might be manifest destiny or fate. So, you know, maybe not, who knows? But in my experience, yes, I've had to make mistakes because 20-something-year-old Peter wouldn't listen. I'm pretty convinced he would not have listened to better advice. Sadly, would have saved me a lot of time and money. Now I'm looking and open-minded to what I am telling myself internally and what the universe is telling me, for lack of a better way to phrase that. You know, just the other day, so last night was my monthly forum with entrepreneurs, and I was sharing vulnerably and honestly that for a long time I told myself I would never want to build a $1 billion company. You know, done the multi-million thing, but $1 billion, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that. Why was I telling myself that? You know what I mean? I mean, so I've only recently asked myself, why have I been shying away from that kind of a big goal? It's perfectly possible. I've met a tremendous number of CEOs of $1 billion companies and several billionaires. They're smart, but some of them aren't as smart as you think they are, or would be. And just recently, literally over the past several months, my wife and I have realized that we actually do have an idea that could be $1 billion company. So step one of that is excusing myself from having that big of a goal, saying, oh no, I wouldn't want that. Well, would I, wouldn't I? I don't know. So to the point about like openness, I'm being much more open and questioning, and I'll give everyone out there 2 extremely valuable questions that I want everyone to ask themselves, which is that true? And how do I know? Yeah. Every headline you see, every Facebook post you see, every thought you have, is that true? And how do I know? And just those 2 questions, Santiago, have been so powerful in helping me check myself when I find, the internal chatter. Like, wait, why did I just think that? Is that actually even true? And how could I test it out? How do I know for sure? And that's a wonderful way to figure out where you are meeting your own bullshit barriers that are preventing you from breaking through to the next thing. I mean, I just heard you say something about, I'm sorry, I'm going to paraphrase, your job. Like, well, I can't just up and leave my job. Is that right? So
yeah, basically.
Is that true? How do you know? So these are the types of situations in which we could maybe stand a step back and ask, like, is that a self-limiting belief or assumption? and how do I test it?
Right. Well, I don't know. That is a bigger conversation that if you want to get into it, do people without certain privileges have the ability to take those risks?
Of course. Everyone can take, anyone can do anything. That in and of itself is a self-limiting belief. Oh gosh, I love getting into, I did a lot of work just as I was getting the company to the point where I could step back a little bit. I started going into classrooms and teaching kids, about entrepreneurship, because I don't know why starting in middle school, high school, we don't teach entrepreneurship to kids, because it teaches you so much about leadership and the way the world works and how to sell someone, make persuasive arguments, so on and so forth. And I went into an inner city school one time, and they were so excited because I introduced them to this idea that becoming a business owner is pretty much the best way to build wealth there is. And by the way, it is one of the only things that you can do in the United States for which you do not need a degree or a license or a certification or even citizenship. Anyone can go open a business if they just get the confidence and clarity around what they're doing and learn the skills. And this was, blow the glass ceiling off revelation for these kids. So they were like, oh, I have everyone telling me I have to get through school and I have to do this and that. And there are only these certain paths. This is this whole other thing that, by the way, no one told me about. I didn't even know I could be that and do that. So, yeah, I mean, the extent to which, and oh gosh, I can't tell you, Santiago, how many entrepreneurs are like, oh, well, I want to go do that, but I can't do that because I don't have this. And I'm like, the hell does this have to do with that? Like, who put in your head you need to link those two things? Just go do that, right? Like, why are you taking beelines over to Milwaukee to go from Boston to LA? Just go to LA. No one's stopping you but you. So yeah, I mean, that's the type of self-limiting stuff that I want to nip in the bud.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the and then the literal, I guess, hurdles that have to go through that. Like, can you go from literally homeless to something? And then
haven't you ever seen The
everything
Pursuit
else?
of Happiness?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I haven't. But
it's a great movie. Yes, it's happened. It's happened. And I've always been, me and my giant ego again. I've always been of the mindset that if someone somewhere has done it, then I can probably do it too. I'm not going to be an Olympic gymnast, right? I couldn't make it in figure skating. Probably not going to happen in gymnastics at my ripe old age. But within reason, especially in business, if someone's done it, then I could probably figure out how to do it. That's a level of confidence I wish on everyone. Now, I'm not always confident about everything, trust me, but that matters.
Yeah. What does the future look like if, I guess, everyone does?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And, you'll also hear me say, thank goodness that everyone doesn't want to just go out and be a leader, because we do need folks to just do the work, right? And that's sad to say. I think on the flip side, I've met a lot of people over the years who are perfectly happy to go into their 9 to 5 and move paper around and do their job and come home, and they love that simplicity. And if I introduced the lack of certainty, the magnanimous uncertainty that not just business owners, but any ambitious person faces, right? Ambition breeds uncertainty. If you have ambition, you want to change your life, you are going to enter into a drastically uncertain time. A lot of people cannot deal with that. They don't like it. They want go to work at 9, come home at 5. I live in the same house for 30 years. I have the same car, whatever. They love that. And that's fine. It's not me. And I'm grateful for those people, because if everyone were like me, we'd all run around like chickens with their heads cut off, right? It would be mayhem. Yeah. So I think that's okay. And back to honest alignment, it's okay to recognize who you are and love that and be okay with that. Yeah. And that's a wonderful part of honesty that I wish on everyone, no matter what they choose to do with their lives.
Yeah. how has the ways in which people achieve these things changed, especially through technology and social media and all of these things?
Say that another way. What are you really asking?
Things used to be different without technology, and now we have to apply the technology to do them.
The tech, I wish folks would not get so hung up on the tech. I wish they would get hung up on the psychology, not the technology. Because many times we come to expect that the technology will do something for us that actually requires human understanding and a human touch. And particularly now, so we're right now helping manufacturing companies in my agency sell in a world without trade shows. So this is sort of a timely discussion because these are guys who, would go to their trade show or conference, twice a year events and do $5 million in business. And now ain't no events, ain't no handshakes, right? So they're being forced to use technology, many of which for the first time. And we have a methodology called the after party sales method. And it goes like this. If we dropped you at the hotel bar after the conference ended, where everyone hangs out, you'd probably make a lot of friends and probably drum up some prospects in business, right? Sadly, when we go to the tech side, we build a website or sales funnel, a lead magnet, whatever, we turn into these like corporate robots that sound like a snooze fest that nobody gives a shit about, right?
Yeah.
So what we want people to understand is like, just because you throw up a technology wall in between you and the customer, it's actually a wall. Like we have to pierce through it, not build it. We're trying to knock it down, to make it easy for them to see who you really are, what you really believe in, what it's like to do business with you, what beyond just the product or service that you provide. That's what people are looking for, to take down that corporate shield. So that starts with a psychological understanding of how people even do business, how they go from know and like to trust, to try, to become a referral source. Skipping steps, as I've learned the hard way, is dangerous, and it's a way to go broke. So that ties back to the psychology, not the technology.
Yeah. Has the psychology changed over time?
Not at all. Not at all. We still make decisions with our primitive reptilian brains and then seek to justify those decisions with our prefrontal logic cortex. And that's something that really good sales marketers understand, that folks make decisions based on emotion, period, end stop. Even people listening to this say, well, I don't do that. Yeah, you do. Then you justify it with logic. And you might do those actions in the same millisecond, but you do them in that order nonetheless. And we ignore that process and the role that our gut plays in decision-making at our own peril.
Right.
So
is that,
it's a really
Jonathan Haidt?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Who is that?
Well, Jonathan Haidt is I think it was a social psychologist, and he wrote a book called The Righteous Mind, which basically says that we make decisions emotionally first, and then we justify them with our rational brain.
Sounds like my kind of guy. Yeah, we do. And by the way, that's a really shitty way of thinking. I mean, it's that, back to your question earlier about divisiveness. We have all these human beings running around with these emotional brains, making emotional decisions that are not built on logic. No wonder we're a complete shit show, right? Like, so the more we can move folks out of that, and yeah, it's out of their comfort zone, and yeah, it's not natural or normal, but we do need to do it, the better.
Yeah. How can we do that without people running away, I guess?
Personal development, man. Yep. Starts with self-awareness, with helping people understand, like, most people don't even, I'm not saying most, some number of people will never believe what you and I are talking about, that you make decisions based on emotion. Like they'd be like, no. Okay, so let's operate from there, right? Take it back to the basics, educate some folks. Let's get a lot less people watching Tiger King and a lot more watching PBS. Understanding how the world works. Clearly, our school system doesn't do a great job of this. And I join a lot of really respectable minds out there in being the first ones to say how lackluster our school system is here in the U.S. I mean, we just clearly are focusing on the wrong things. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that one there.
Yeah. So then, I mean, is there a way to do this on a broader scale rather than, I mean, the hard part is that like humans are talking to humans. So is there a broader way of getting more people to think in this way? Or is it?
Listen, I don't know, you know, this is a presidential election year, right? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm hoping that the future of America's political system looks very different. I'm not, as I said earlier, I'm not a political guy, but we need new leaders. We need new leaders who understand these things and who say in their speeches, hey, we know this is how humans function. And I know this is probably out of your comfort zone. I want you to look at this set of facts and hold your emotions aside, which I know can take you in a bunch of different directions. And let's, you know, look at this together. And here's where I'm trying to move you. And here's why it's important. Nobody talks like that, right?
Sure.
And it's a technique in my book. I call it being honest and then pointing to the honesty, right? This is why it's not just honesty, it's strategic honesty. It's one thing if I'm honest with you, Santiago. I'm like, yeah, listen, you know, these are the facts. But it's another if I'm like, hey, these are the facts, and I'm showing you the facts because I trust you and you deserve the truth. And what I'm hoping is that through being honest and transparent with you, you and I can look at this and make an action plan. Like when I point to it, then what happens? Well, psychologically, I've boxed you in. Because now if you're like, you know, fuck you, then you look like the asshole. Because I've already put myself out there and said, hey, I'm being honest with you because I trust you. What are you going to say? Oh, screw you. Like, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, no, well, thank you. Yes, I do want you to be honest with me, right?
Sure.
But we don't, like, for some reason, we're still talking at people instead of talking with them, you know, helping them along the psychological journey of, hey, you know, this is probably scary stuff. I'd be scared too. And you're going to see all these scary headlines about wearing masks and the pandemic, and that's awful. And unfortunately, you know, that's getting in the way of all of us taking action because you and I both know we're all emotional people and we react with our emotions, right? People are like, oh, we do? Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. Well, maybe we do. Now I'm open to that idea. I wasn't even introduced to me before, right? This is why we need you to take action. I know it sucks. I know blah, blah, blah. Nobody talks like that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, either what's coming at us goes over our heads, or it's like some, you know, tablets brought down from Mount Sinai. And we're like, well, where'd you get that? You know, where'd you get that? Right? We haven't been brought along in the process, on the journey to know why this leader has come to this conclusion. You know, I live here in Fairfield County, Connecticut. So we had, you know, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, over our airwaves almost every day during the pandemic. And I have to say, he did a pretty good job of doing exactly that, of saying those 3 magic words that I love to hear, which is not I love you, but is I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. He kept saying, like, I have no idea. We're going to figure it out together. And as soon as I know, you'll know. And because we don't know, here's what we're going to do. And lo and behold, look at the New York cases. Doing well up here in this part of the country. Now, maybe somebody listening to this in October is going to be like, well, Peter, now cases are back up, so you suck. Maybe they will, right? Depends on what people do. Depends on whether those open lines of communication stay open. So anyway, that was long-winded, but.
No, do humans need leaders?
Yeah. Humans, you know, watch, you know, back to that PBS, man. I watched a lot of monkeys in my childhood. Some of them were even on TV. You know what I mean? No. No, but I mean, yeah, we're a hierarchical, I don't know, I'm not sure what the adjective is, species. And Simon Sinek, who also went to Brandeis, like me, talks a lot about this phenomenon. It's like, we don't mind if someone's in a leadership position. We don't even mind if they get paid more, you know, if it's at a company or whatever. We just want them to be good and have our best interests at heart. That's what's been lost. We don't know. There's so many conflicts of interest, lobbyists, profit incentives or whatever. We've just lost faith that leaders have our best interests at heart. That's why, back to strategic honesty, we need a leader who's going to point to it again, say, hey, this has not been going well. You clearly don't know who to trust, and I don't blame you. This is how I'm going to try to solve that. we'll solve it together. And I'm not going to be perfect, right? But
Yeah.
we're going to try it. We're going to try to do better. That would go so far, don't you think?
Yeah. I do feel like, and this is a concept that I've been thinking about for a while, but it seems like America is very focused on this idea of the Ubermensch, the Superman that is going to come in and save us all. But kind of what you had mentioned earlier, whenever I asked about passing through systems and bureaucracies, is this sort of banding together sort of thing. And so it's like, what is the balance between like community versus leader and the other way around?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because for some reason in this country, we've lost a sense of personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is someone else's fault. We're an extremely litigious society, and we've done this to ourselves. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to allow folks to go to the Grand Canyon, fall off a cliff, and then sue the National Park Service. Like, what? What has happened? Like, come on now, and as soon as we began to allow that in our country, what did we get? We got moral hazard, unscrupulous folks who just saw an opportunity to make money.
Sure.
Some of them, rightfully so. Maybe there was negligence, but many, it's like, come on, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And because we've lost personal responsibility, to your point about Superman, we're always looking to someone else to solve the problem. What a terrible thing to teach children. No, don't worry, someone else will. Oh, you didn't get a good grade? Well, we'll go to the teacher and fix that. Like, what? No, you're a dumbass. You deserve a bad grade. Study harder. It just that doesn't make sense to me, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. Mm-hmm. And I'm unsure why. It's in the constructs of how we've built our culture and what we've allowed to have happen. Now, I have to say, we talked about protests earlier, right? I have to say, at least those protesters are going out and doing something. Sure. Not just sitting at home. Respect the hell out of that, because it'd be easy to be like, "Oh, racism is someone else's problem." It's not. Right. This is all our problems. And these things clearly haven't been addressed. What I really don't know, Santiago, and now you're going to make me think about it all weekend, is I don't know why our personal responsibility seems to have gone out the window and is getting worse, not better. Mm-hmm. I imagine it's a function of the fact that we all have way too much free time and we've all turned into entitled little bitches. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, another Brandeis guy, food, water, shelter, right? These are things that give us purpose in life. Mm-hmm. After that, the little triangle at the top is self-actualization. Turns out that's really hard, and it puts people into a lot of tailspins and psychological strife, right? You don't have suicides when folks are preoccupied with like, where am I going to get the next meal and how am I going to hunt this animal and how am I going to do, right? Like you get it when people are struggling with like, who am I and how do I fit into society and why am I being bullied? And because we have too much damn free time, right? Yeah. So, I think in a society where we have too much free time, for some reason, it allows us to shirk responsibility. But I don't know how we make that jump. As you can tell, I've been grappling with this to understand it, because if we don't restore a sense of personal responsibility in this country, it's like, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to, like, you've got to do this for yourself. Like, grab yourself up by the bootstraps, get help proactively, do this stuff. Gosh, one of the things we studied I was an economics major in undergrad. I took a wonderful class on the welfare system, trying to figure out, if the welfare system works, why isn't there a swift movement of people off of welfare? Mm-hmm. Turns out that the incentives are such that it makes it more economical for people to stay on welfare, actually make more money than the entry-level jobs they could transition to and get to move them off of welfare, right? So some people do. Some people take personal responsibility and say to themselves, well, I'm going to either live on welfare forever, and that's who I am, or I'm going to get off it and suffer for a couple of years and make a better life for myself in the end. And some do. Most don't, sadly, By the way, we in that class revamped that system in the period of about 6 weeks. And then we were left with the question, Why doesn't the system change if it's so obvious to a bunch of college kids how to fix it? Politics, infighting, bullshit, dishonesty. That's why.
Yeah.
Sadness, very sad. But yeah, personal responsibility is a big one. This whole Superman complex you bring up is a real problem. It's a big, big problem. And I don't know how to solve it.
Right. And I mean, yeah, the personal responsibility thing, I do, and maybe this is just like my angry atheist from like 5 years ago in my head, thinking that like there is a sense of religion kind of feeding into that, of like there is a being that I can pray to that will solve this. And so no matter what, even if there's no like person that can come in and solve this, at least there is something else. And
well, we have been taught to throw our hands up in a way and say, well, it's in God's hands, right? Which I think is really interesting. By the way, that's a wonderful thing to have happen if you lead a congregation, because if you can convince people that, throw it up, leave in God's hands anyway, it creates a dependent relationship on the structure of religion, right? Very interesting. People take stock. By the way, really sharp folks who have been listening to this from the first part and now the second part may wonder to themselves, Peter's talking about personal responsibility, and then earlier, he and Santiago had a conversation about free will and theory of relativity, and how everything's set anyway. So what gives, right?
Right.
That's I don't know the answer to that. That's really interesting. Maybe it's neither here nor there then.
Well, that's a funny thing. I actually don't believe in free will in the traditional sense, because like you said, if you try and chase down this nebulous thing that is free will, you will continue to run circles around it, and then you either have to concede to a God or just concede that there isn't any. And so for me, it's not so much like I don't spend too much time thinking about or trying to restructure language so that I can speak in a way that makes it to where I don't have free will, because that's a very, I can't restructure that. I decided to go to the store. It's like my needs as a biological being required that I go get sustenance. And so it would be very difficult to restructure language that way. So instead, I've always kind of thought about it as we need to structure our environment in our society and our culture to encourage behaviors that we know to benefit us. And so like you said, this group of college students was able to figure this thing out, but we also don't have a way by which to implement these things. And so I always kind of believe that no, humans aren't evil by nature, but it's really the systems that are in place that are kind of encouraging this sort of behavior.
Totally.
That we're rewarding these sorts of things. And a question I asked a friend earlier this week was, are we, I guess, morally required to make life worse for people who are morally reprehensible?
Yeah, that one's it. I mean, yeah, then you're getting into the, punitive system, right? How do we punish people? How do we rehabilitate people? That's beyond my scope of expertise for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, about how we structure these incentive systems, because so often in companies, we have these super shitty incentives. I mean, I was talking to a friend at American Express, pretty great position at American Express. I'm like calling them out now. I usually don't do this, but it was like, yeah, I'd love to bring you in, but in our culture, we prioritize being nice and avoiding conflict over pursuing truth. That's their prerogative, right? But let's not lie about the fact that every time they ignore the truth, they miss an opportunity to innovate, to give their customers what they're really asking for, to kick people out of their culture who suck, whatever. So yeah, very interesting.
Right. Well, I think it does kind of have to do with restructuring or redefining what that might mean. Like like we talked about earlier, how you have this hierarchy of values. I have it too. I always end the podcast by saying my 3 things, which are love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong. And so I don't use love never fails to just kind of like let anything slide and be like, oh, well, like I don't want to hurt you. And so I'll just use love and not deal with the problem. But no, it's like if you work around it, you go, well, I would rather give you more love by being honest with you so that we can solve this problem and things are better off that way. And so it's like, oh, well, our company culture says that like we would rather be kind. Well, you're being unkind by being dishonest and not confronting these problems.
Totally. I mean, look at the problems parents are having, with the next generation. We have this whole thing about helicopter parents and everyone gets a trophy and Jimmy needs straight A's and all that. We've created a generation of people who can't fail.
Yeah.
Because they've been propped up. Is that love? Is that honesty? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, I have a dog now, right? Big fat Australian Shepherd Poodle mix. He is a wonderful dog because I trained the shit out of him. Tough love, really. I was very tough with him. And now he's wonderful. Can walk him off leash. He knows the rules. He's very happy. And meanwhile, I have friends and colleagues with dogs that do whatever they want. Poop all over the place, bite, scratch, do whatever. They thought they were loving them. Oh no, I can't discipline him. Okay, well, that's what happens.
Sure.
We all know this. And then when we're tested to take the action we know we need to take, the tough love action, and we know produces the right outcomes, we shy away.
Right.
Personal responsibility, dishonesty. Let's be honest about what it takes.
Yeah. There always seems to be that kind of links into parenting as well. And we always kind of see this generational pendulum of parents who are way too harsh. And then those create kids who become parents that are way too easygoing. And then that kind of wave keeps happening back and forth. And we never seem to find the balance in between. Yes, I need to be tough on you, but that doesn't mean abuse. But then also, sure, you can do whatever you want, even if that means you abuse me.
Well, yeah, I have to say, so there's listen, I'm not a psychologist, right? So I can't argue for the happiness of a child, right? But I have 2 eyes and ears, and you do too. And we now have the benefit of watching several generations, right? We have a history.
Yeah. And
it's pretty clear that the parents who are pretty harsh with their kids might have hated them and been miserable, but damn, were they productive?
Sure.
Now we have a generation of kids, and I'm about to offend you and or someone else out there. Apparently there's this thing where you can watch other people play video games.
Yeah.
This is a thing. We want to talk about morally reprehensible. I think that's morally reprehensible. It's like, that's what we're allowing to happen now. That's not productive. That's not helpful to society. That's literally doing nothing. I could even make an argument. It'd be a stretch, but I can make an argument for the kids who are playing the games. Okay, fine. Maybe there's some sort of teamwork element, training their brains to be hand-eye coordinate. I don't know. I'll make something up. But watching other people play video games, I can't get behind that.
Right.
So, you think of the type of generation of parents who would be like, are you kidding? No, go get a job, go, read a book, go whatever. Those kids might grow up to be spiteful, hateful people, but damn, they'll be productive. So what's interesting from a societal standpoint is, which would we rather have? And I think, to your point, what's interesting is like, maybe we can say, well, we'd rather end up in the middle. We haven't been able to do that yet, generationally, right, on a big scale with millions of people. We swing back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we haven't been able to do it yet, I don't know how likely it is that we'll figure out how to land in the middle. And if we're going to keep swinging back and forth, maybe we should have a little more awareness about, hey, before you hate the way you were raised and you go to raise your kids to get a trophy every day and watch other people play video games and not have a care in the world, maybe you should think about how you ended up. Maybe it's not so bad. At least we built a productive society off of it. I don't know. Or not. I'm not a parent. I'm willing to be disagreed on that. But I was a child of two parents who were like, no, go get a job.
Right.
Excellence matters. Work matters. Watch PBS because I ain't getting cable for you. And listen, nobody hated it more than I did at the time. But now I'm very grateful. Very grateful because I have a lot of friends who didn't have that upbringing and they're a damn mess.
Sure. And there was also a balance too, because they were able to allow you to, hey, do musical theater, hey, do your figure skating, hey, do everything else. So
absolutely,
it is always kind of a balance anyways. And it seems like we always fluctuate between one and probably a false dichotomy of just these are the two things and there's nothing else.
Of
but
course.
Also it seems like America just wants to turn everything up to 11. And so there is no in between. There's no middle way. It just becomes if you do this thing, you're going to do it all of the way. And I guess we haven't seen that extremes are probably the ways in which we strangle ourselves with the extremes.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I mean, if we're going to be honest, we need to be in the middle, probably on everything. Parenting, politics, work, whatever. I hope we get to that place. It seems like we're going the opposite direction, that we're, blowing to the poles more and more, but we need the middle. And, to wrap up the parenting thing, I mean, talk about entrepreneurship. You don't need any sort of license, certification, training, nothing. Sadly, we don't need any of that to be parents either. That, I think, is also a tremendous problem. I wish there were a lot more formal training around that. Both my sisters are teachers, and one is a school counselor. And having taught kids and dealt with parents, they have wholeheartedly agreed with me that we need a lot more training and education before people decide to procreate. So I'm sure that'll be an unpopular opinion. So someone listening to this is like, Peter's such an asshole. I can't believe he would say something like that. That's our God-given right, and that's okay.
Well, yeah. And then the hard part becomes implementation, because then it's just like, do we do forced sterilization for people that don't pass?
Oh no, I'm not going that far. I'm just saying,
right, exactly. And that's the again, spewing towards the extremes, right? Really, really quickly. And
yeah, no, I'm just saying, I think people should understand basics of human psychology, basics of child psychology, basics of what it takes to raise a productive member of society.
Yeah,
basics. I'm talking basics here.
There is, I guess, a little not quite off topic, but there is something that I was talking to a medical emergency specialist. Like his job was literally to deal with systemic problems in medical emergencies, but the value of fluidity or mobility, ability to change, is more better encouraged in those sorts of situations, because rather than wait around for new information once you've already made a bad decision, instead having the ability to fluctuate and kind of move on that. Does that value also apply to entrepreneurship and business?
Well, it applies. It absolutely applies to entrepreneurship. I mean, it's all about the art of the pivot. Trust me, I've learned that one the hard way. And it's also in the definition of what it means to be honest to achieve an outcome. Honesty doesn't always mean, in fact, it rarely means just be candid with someone. In fact, there are a lot of times in which that'll be hurtful.
Sure.
And not empathetic. So, part of honesty is being willing to admit fault and ready for change all the time. You're not an honest person unless you're there. And if you think about it, being honest with the others around you, sometimes it's super important. And that's the way. Other times we need to be honest about others around us and be willing to change the way we communicate with people, the questions we ask, the language we use. You and I talked earlier about you should versus I heard you say. And this is an experience I have, right? Even that shift, that more empathetic shift, is being more honest about that person, where they're coming from and what they need and what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so much. And whenever we're talking about making shifts, making changes. It's about opening up that blind spot of ours, that big area of what we don't know. And that is one thing that flows through every CEO in my book. In fact, I do a chapter about Bethany Frankel, who went from like nobody to housewife of New York to selling a 9-figure alcohol brand, right? Great story. Mm-hmm. And her mantra I sum up as ignorance is power, knowledge is bliss. She basically operates from this place of, I don't know. And if I don't know, I'm going to ask. And I interviewed her one time. It was Ad Week, New York. And then she went on stage and she's on this panel full of guys, ad executives. And she heard a term she didn't know. And she shut down the entire thing, stopped everyone and was like, I don't know what that means. Tell me what that means. You can imagine living a life where you're like, I don't know what that means. Tell me what that means. Imagine how smart you would get.
Sure.
Over days and months and years of admitting, like, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Tell me. And that's, how she and many of the other CEOs in my book have been successful because of, I don't know. If we need to pivot, let's try it. Let's do it. I don't know. Right?
Sure.
So powerful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess final few things. What's a hurdle that you're still working on as you, I guess, in a business sense, but also in a personal sense?
I have a poor relationship with money. And I'm over the past year, I've developed an awareness that I have operated primarily from a scarcity mindset, not an abundance mindset. That's been a new revelation to me. I would have swore up and down 3, 4, 10 years ago. No, like I think about it in abundance. There's all kinds of opportunity out there. And I do believe that there's all kind of opportunity in that. But the choices I make are often from a scarcity mindset. So I've been dealing with that and trying to catch myself recently with my 2 questions. Is that true? How do I know? Yeah. Whenever I'm thinking like, oh, we can't afford that. Like, we can afford it. It's just me being an asshole. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I've had to learn to catch myself in those thought patterns that I know are unhealthy, and try to rewire some of that. And it's what's funny is, I can feel that, listen, I'm doing what I say in the book, or I'm no hypocrite. I can feel that self-honesty really transforming the way I think and the actions I take, which is wonderful. And I wish that on everyone. But as always, self-awareness is step number 1.
Yeah. And then finally, what's something that you've been into lately, whether it be media or books or whatever, that you want other people to know about?
Oh my gosh. The most exciting thing has happened. So Apple TV is finally coming out with the Foundation series. Okay. So Foundation is a series of science fiction books. Again, I'm just the
Asimov.
Person. That's right. Isaac Asimov, fellow Columbia University guy. I did not know that until last night when I started rereading the series again. I read it like twice as a little kid. I read it when I was like 9. I read the whole series. And again, when I was like 13, 14, something like that.
It's been on my list.
Oh man, so great. What I didn't see when I was a kid, I read it and it was awesome, the story. But now I dive into the history. Like that's what Star Wars was based on. That's what Star Trek was based on. Like it all came out of Asimov's Foundation series. And forever I thought to myself, why don't they make this into a movie or a series? It would be epic. And finally Apple TV is making Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I cannot wait to see it. It's going to change my life. I'm going to be like in front of the TV with popcorn, like for the first second, just like sweating with joy. I can't wait.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's so many times where I'll be reading the science fiction that came from Asimov, Clarke, and all that stuff. It's like, how are these guys so forward thinking, especially in a time where they didn't have any of this technology and knowing exactly how it would affect.
They really were.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, we won't go into this too deeply, but like a lot of Scientology was based off of the science fiction works of some of these writers and stuff. So it really has sort of rippled through society in a very interesting way. If you're interested in how, the history and religion has sprung out of the minds of these folks. Yeah. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Peter, once again, thank you for doing this with me. Plug your stuff once again.
Happy to. So come have an honest conversation with me anytime. I'm at honest2greatness.com. I have a lot of resources for leaders, for middle managers, for frontline employees, for entrepreneurs, helping you understand how to implement honesty at honest2greatness.com. That's TO. You can take the 21-question honesty quiz totally for free. It'll tell you what honesty type you are. You'll also get the companion workbook. And of course, go wherever books are sold. And I hope you'll pick up a copy of Honest to Greatness, which is my new book coming out August 2020. And you get to leave a very honest review, whether you like it or not, because it's a book about honesty. So hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely looking forward to that. I actually really want to read it. So you've convinced me. You did it. That's what you came here for. So,
yep.
Well, yeah. And again, thank you so much for doing this with me. And I should thank Adam for getting us in touch. So definitely. And yeah, I will end the recording there. Or actually, I should say, I'm Santiago Ramones.
And I'm Peter Cosdoy.
Yeah, there you go.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. Bloom is available now, streaming everywhere. Put it on in the background, put it on your workout playlist, show it to your friends so you can all enjoy it together. You can also buy the thing and get bonus content to get a bit deep into the emotions you can feel with it. I also make music with Power Cycle, an experimental electronic trio. Our first completely improvised album, Too Many Damn Cables, is streaming everywhere. More to come from Power Cycle in the future. To support this podcast, leave reviews, comments, tell your friends about it, and buy my music, because by supporting me, you're supporting the podcast. I always end the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.